I wanted to make this video on drawing tips for you guys. I want to give a big thanks to Timo for being the guinea pig here. These are his drawings that he sent me. Looks like you're doing stuff from Bodies in Motion, which is awesome. And so he was asking me if I could give him some tips on some of the drawings to kind of take a look. I think you're doing a great job, my friend. So I wanted to send this to everybody and include kind of some of my suggestions when you're doing these kind of sketches or figure drawings. And so not only for you, Timo, but I think everybody else can also appreciate maybe some tips if you haven't done this before. Now, a lot of you guys have some good experience in doing figure drawing, so that's fantastic. And so hopefully this will just add to your body of knowledge, so to speak. So what I've done here is I brought this in. As you can see, Timo's shown me the photo reference that he's drawing from, and then the sketch that he did, which is great. If you guys haven't discovered Bodies in Motion, I highly recommend you check it out. There's a couple other resources out there on the web that's free. So look at some figure drawing stuff on Facebook and YouTube. If you do a search, you'll find all kinds of cool stuff. Okay, a couple things to notice is one thing. Let me adjust this a little bit so we center it. But when you start drawing these things, I want you guys, just as I'm talking about in your scenes and your storyboards, to push things, to not just accept the default view. I also want you to do that for your figure drawing and your poses. So this is a concept that I learned from, well, it's kind of been handed down from Walt Stansfield, and also from some of the figure drawing teachers that I've had, and some of the lessons that I took at Pixar from Tom Gately, who kind of enforces these kinds of drawing things. It's pushing the pose and learning where you want to expand. So let me just make sure my pen is working here. So let's take a look at a couple things. When you see a pose like this, I want you to notice the angle of the head, the angle of the shoulders, and the angle of the hips. Okay, that for one is something that you should always keep in mind. Right now, a lot of you guys have also heard about the line of action in a particular pose. Let's say the line of action is like this for this pose. So the tendency for all of us is to do something like this, just straight up and down. All right, and what we want to do is look for the line of action. If the line of action is like this in this pose, what we want to draw is this. We want to push that line of action even more. This is the idea that we exaggerate an existing pose and go. I recommend you go as crazy and as far as you think is just wildly beyond what you should be drawing, and I think you'll get closer to what you actually really should be drawing. So in that case, so what I'm trying to say here is push it, and then if you have to pull back, you can do that. All right. So looking at this pose, let me just do this again. Is you got the angle of the head about here, you got the angle of the shoulders here, you also have the angles of the hips here. Next, you want to also look at the appendages. So where is the angle of the feet? Okay, the feet is there, the feet is there. So again, the tendency is to draw things very up and down and something like this. What you want to do is be very keen on where the angle of these appendages and the feet and also the hands are landing. So is there a bend in the wrist? Is it like this? So this would be the forearm, this would be the hand. You want to make sure that you're also taking note of where these bends are going. Okay. So where am I going with this? Let me go ahead and bring the opacity down a little bit, and I'll do a quick draw over on Timo's stuff. So if I look at this pose here, what I want to do is infer a couple of things, and I'm going to try and exaggerate this. Now, I have the luxury of like studying this for a little bit, but the first thing I'm going to do is try and do a line of action like this. Okay. So let me go and see if I can do that. So in my mind, what I'm going to see is this, is that line of action. And then a couple of things I'm going to try and do is I'm going to change the angle of the head. So you can do very simple stuff like this. Let's see if I can keep this sketch quick. And so I'm going to also exaggerate the angle of feet. I'm going to get that here. I'm also going to exaggerate the lean and then the body position. So I'm just trying to see what I can do, right? So once you have the angle of the shoulders and the angle of the hips, then you can kind of start filling in the blanks, right? The anatomy stuff actually becomes a little bit easier because you fill that in from your knowledge of what you know to be correct, because you hopefully studied anatomy, you remember the shapes and the poses, and you also remember your ellipses. So you'd have like you'd wrap around shape here, and then you'd want to go in and get the solidity of the feet. So I'm actually going to change this foot a little bit. It's hard for me to talk and draw, as you guys might imagine. You really have to kind of concentrate when you're doing this stuff. So the other thing is I'm doing a lot of curves. That's the kind of the way I'm trying to find the rhythm of the pose. And, you know, don't forget your ellipses as these things wrap around the body. Okay. Now the other thing is I can't see the other arm, but remember this is a pose for you. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a pose for that arm. So don't just accept what you're seeing there. What you want to do is interpret what you see and actually create a pose from your reference. Okay. So I don't like this hand that I drew here. I'm gonna maybe extend a couple of the fingers, and I get something like this. Okay. Now, so hopefully I'm trying to do this line of action here. I got the head shape this way, and I'm getting the foot extended a little bit. Now, it's not perfect, but that's kind of what you want to do, is make sure you're really exaggerating the pose a little bit more than what is represented there. Okay. So let me go to another example. Let me save this out real quick, and I'll open another example from Timo. And let's do this one. Okay, so this is a male's pose. And again, very cool. I think your interpretation here, Timo, is fantastic. And this is a really good start. So let's see if we can take advantage of some of the things I just talked about and enhance that a little bit more. So let me move this so we can see it a little bit better. I'll shrink this down just a tiny bit. Okay, first things to notice is what I just said about angle of the head, angle of the shoulders, angle of the hips, right? So it's like you want to find the head, the body, and the weight. That's one method I use. So here is the angle of the head is pretty like this. You get the angle of the shoulders. Look at the angle of the hips. That's really extreme, and that's really cool. We're going to use that. Now also check out the angle of the body. You get this nice curve in here, right? So this is something you want to look at and observe when you're looking at this first photograph. It's almost like the appendages can be put on later. But one thing I'll notice here, the angle of the foot is going up, and this foot is going back that way, okay? So the line of action is a little bit difficult to see, but I think overall it's something like that, you know, kind of like a backward C curve, and that's something that we can see if we can enhance. I also like to, if the angle of the head is like this, sometimes I like to change the angle of the head like that to give it a little more expression. The hands too, that's something else. Like right now he's got like a fist, so I'm probably going to want to open up the hands in another way so that, you know, you get a little more expression. Okay, so this is really cool angle, this is really cool angle. Let's see what we can do. And then you've done some of that, Timo. Check out what he's doing here. I think you could go way more extreme on your hips, and you can probably do a lot more with the body shape. So look at this backward C curve here, and what we want to do, just as a body shape, is you get this, like a compression and a stretch. Okay, so these are the shoulders, these are the hips. Just in the most basic way, you're going to get this like compression on one side and a stretch on the other. Look for that when you're looking at figure drawing or any kind of reference, okay? And again, push it more than what you think you are seeing. So let's see, let me give it a shot. First thing I'm going to try and do here is I'm going to also again change the angle of the head. I want him looking up. Maybe I'll open his mouth a little bit. Again, this is just reference. And let me bring your Opacity down just a little bit more, Timo, just because I don't want to be copying your drawing. I want to be using the reference. Okay, so then angle the shoulders, angle the hips. Now I don't actually have to draw that line. You'll get to the point where you can see this in your mind's eye, and then you don't have to actually draw the actual lines of reference. Okay, you can just keep that in your brain and then draw what shapes you need. That's where you get the efficiency. So for now, yes, I can put that in there, but really over time, you're going to be able to draw that. You're going to be able to draw without those guides on your sheet of paper, essentially. One thing I do want to put is this really extreme stretch and compression on his body. We really get that shoulder down, and then we really get this one up. Okay, so then you get something like this. Now you'll notice I'm not being very precious with the way I'm throwing down my stroke. I'm kind of scribbling it in here. I'm kind of doing this kind of thing. So that's another thing you can do. After a while, forget about line quality, forget about that stuff. Get the pose, get the expression, get that. That's what you're going to need. Okay, and then I want to make sure I get a good silhouette. So I'm not going to put the hand here. I'm going to put the hand out here and make sure that's good. So I also want to change the hand. Let me do something. Do something like this, and get that a little bit better out there, right? And a little bit better hand pose is basically what I'm trying to do. So you want to get more expression as much as possible. Here's the pit of the neck, and here we're going to really try and compress this body shape. Again, like I'm saying, push this. I mean, you're going to break the body. You're going to break the bones here. It's going to seem weird at first, but give it a try. Bend that knee more than you think you should. You want to get this way up high, that foot, and those toes should be like, we should almost see the bottom of his foot. I want to push this to the extreme, make this thing as expressive as possible. And then we're probably going to get the weight here on his foot. So let me see if I'll try and bend this back leg a little bit more than what we're seeing in the photo. And then I'll give it a little more weight on the foot. So we get a real bend in the ankle. Okay? And it's gonna really help us here. And then we get a nice ellipse right here. We get his underwear this way, okay? And so then later on you can go in, if you need to, this is digital, right? You can go in on another layer, you grab another sheet of paper on top of this, and you can draw this pose again. Again, it's just reference. And don't think of it doesn't have to be so precious. We're not doing a work of art that's going to be in a museum. What we want to find is the expression of this particular character and make it unique to what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of flexibility in these body parts. You'd be surprised how elastic the human body really is. So one thing, again, looking at my pose, there's no left arm. So I'm going to try and probably put something in there. It looks a little weird to me. So maybe I'll just do something like this, and then I'll bend his wrist this way. So you get a couple of, it's a very awkward pose to begin with because of the way the balance is on the figure. But okay, let's take a look now, and we'll compare what we have with Timo's stuff and with the actual photo reference. So you see there's a lot more up and down here, and then when I bring up my reference, there's a lot of curve going on, right? I'm really trying to push this as much as possible and make it really extreme. In fact, that head shape, I would probably do something even more extreme. You can go with this as far as you want, but you could do stuff like this, where his head is like way up high, and you get that kind of an angle with whatever it is that you're drawing here. Okay, so then he's out, right? Or maybe I want to change that altogether. Like, what if I want to bring his head down into what he's looking at, and you create a story out of the pose that you have as reference. right? This is the whole point of using photo reference or using figure drawing reference. One, yes, you create hand-eye coordination by, by repetition of what it is that you do and drawing down the strokes. But it's also like, can you fill your brain with the anatomy and the poses so that you can actually use this in your day-to-day work, okay? And apply this to your storyboard. So I don't know if I would ever use a pose like this one in a drawing, but maybe, maybe he's juggling something. Maybe he's like, maybe he's some kind of magician or whatever, right? So here you go. And then you can use this pose, right? That's the idea of pushing things to the extreme. So you're using your photo reference from where I started, and I came up with this. That's a long stretch, and that's what I mean by pushing things. So this drawing is in no means perfect. I could go over this again and fill it in with the anatomy and the bones and the muscles and whatever. Even some of the proportions aren't that great. But the idea is I want to push this even more than you can possibly see in reality. Okay, so this is what the pose looked like. We're looking at the guy on the left, and then what I came up with was this. All right. So next time you go and see your figure drawing, or you have any kind of photo reference, or you open up Bodies in Motion, and you're studying your stuff, which you should be doing on a regular basis, I encourage you to push this stuff to the extreme. And remember, get the angle of the head, angle of the shoulders, angle of the hips, and find the weight where the body is leaning, with either it's standing with a foot, like in this particular case, where you get the foot is on the ground here as far as the weight, or you have a hand leaning on the ground or something like that supporting the body. So make sure you get that weight. It's very, very important. All right, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And again, push it, make sure it's awesome. All right, see you guys soon. Bye.